So live from Harump, the Valley of the Dirt People, where Logan lives, and I live, and Mojave Bob lives, we are doing Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. This is your show where we talk about motorcycle and motorcycle-related products, specifically dirt bike stuff, and answer your questions. So we're going to go right to the questions that pop up in the chat room right after Logan does his most important job besides talking when I get thirsty. What's that, Logan? You're reading what?
The KTM...
Read? Ad? Yeah. Okay. You ready? You see, the guy did it last week. I just handed it to him, and he did a really good job. So, he put some spunk into it, Sound like he was excited to say it.
Powered by a distinct ready-to-race mentality, KTM is the world's leading high-performance street and off-road sport motorcycle manufacturer, with North America headquarters in Marietta, California. Over the years, KTM has built a reputation as a fierce competitor on the racetracks around the world. And the brand's remarkable global success is reflected in every product it develops and every move it makes.
That's right. That was good. Way better than the first time. You almost have it memorized now, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you wake up in the morning kind of saying that? Not yet?
Not yet.
Yeah. You do ride a KTM, though.
Yes.
Sometimes I ride a KTM. Lately, I haven't been. I don't have my bikes. Well, they're all over the place, but I left my rally bikes up in Idaho, and I rode a KTM back here, though. So, Tarek Saba says, Jimmy, let's talk about the fall of Suzuki and where they go from here. They're still making bikes. They actually make some pretty good ones. They've let some of the really competitive stuff slip a little bit behind in the off-road segment, but I mean, I still see a lot of DRZs out there, 400s and DRZ 650s cruising around. V-Stroms, they're still pushing the V-Strom a little bit. I don't know. You used to be a Suzuki dealership. So you might know a little bit more about it. Your Suzuki dealership, I think, is now a Ducati dealership over there, the one out in on Newport Boulevard. So, yeah, I it's crazy times. I don't know, when you start looking at in the United States, people don't use it. Motorcycle's not a necessity; it's a recreation, and when we have these kind of big bumps in the economy, and it happened over and over again. Brands that build recreation equipment kind of get slumped, but that's sure not what's happening right now. At least not in the U.S. I mean, dirt bikes sales are. I mean, try to find a mini bike right now. Try to find an off-road bike. They're gone, but yet what I've been told is the manufacturers have to look out for their worldwide market that may just come to a screeching halt. So for a lot of it, man, enjoy it while it lasts. I don't know if Suzuki's, they're maybe just not at the highest form of competition, but some of the prices on some of the bikes that they had, all those older RMZs are probably gone now, right? At the prices they were selling them at. And I know Kawasaki just announced some new bikes yesterday. The interesting one is definitely the KX250 XC and the KX450 XC. Those are the two interesting bikes, which are their stab at the kind of the off-road racing market, which is kind of a long time coming. But but I think with the announcement, especially of the KX250, the all-new KX250 motocross bike, and then the XC, and I know they were sitting on a lot of the last year's KX250Fs. Those are probably going to be pretty heavily discounted as well, I would suspect. So, Michael Barrett says, the Husaberg 570 is an excellent bike. Well, you don't have to say that around me. Yeah. Actually, I know how long he's been trying to bargain to get the one that he got his hands on. He had a friend that had a really cherry one, and the guy was like, just didn't really think he should get rid of it. Lucky he didn't listen to this podcast because the price probably would have gone up. But yeah, I agree with that. Let's see. Jason Abbott and Jonathan Levy just joined. Jason used to be Honda's press guy. Man, I miss you. It was a good run over there. Rodrigo Lopes says, Jimmy, have you ever played with your 2020 KTM 300 XCW TPI Powervalve? Logan, what do you think? What's the answer to that question?
Yes.
Yes. You've seen me do it.
I think so.
Yeah. Yes, I've played with it a lot. Unlike the carbureted versions and the fuel-injected ones, KTM kind of tells you not to play with the power valve. They actually put a dab of that yellow paint on it so you can see where it was indexed at, and kind of maybe so you don't move it. Kind of like sometimes they put them on axles or swing arm pivots and stuff so you can tell if it's moved. But if you want to change the power characteristic of that bike, that is I'm going to call it the first and second most effective thing you can do. And the reason I'm saying first and second is I suspect the reason KTM doesn't want you to play with it is if you turn it too far, you can get the bike to perform poorly and even detonate really bad. Because if you turn it one direction, and forgive me for not remembering which is which at the moment because it's always a little bit backwards to me. But if you turn it so you hold the power valve down longer, right, and then you that's turning it right. I got Al, who's a KTM 300 expert in here.
Tightening the spring up.
But I don't know if that spring is a counter. You know what I mean? The spring. They used to be, I've seen so many different power valve configurations and stuff. I don't remember what it is. Sometimes I think the spring might be a preload against another spring.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's the opposite. So sometimes when you tighten it up, it actually makes it open up quicker. And this is why don't get hung up on what I'm telling you. Turn it a half turn one way, try it, turn it back a full turn, so you go a half turn the other way, and try it and see how it reacts. Just like clickers. You know, some people go, well, my suspension's too soft. And I go, well, give it 3 clicks of compression, stiffer. And they're like, what? I'm like, stiffen it up. And they're like, no, I want it softer. And I go, stiffen it up. And they stiffen it up, and it makes the bike ride softer because it holds it up in the stroke. When I would watch that person, I would say the suspension's packing down, you know, or it's riding low in the stroke and having So anyways, back to the power valve. Well, I don't know exactly which way it is, but one way or the other. But here's where it can go bad, and I have seen it happen just based on detonation, not on a TPI bike, but on a carbureted one. If you turn it to the way that holds the power valve down longer, that builds up a lot of extra heat inside of the engine because the exhaust gases, the power valve, the exhaust port is theoretically lower, and it takes longer for the gases to be able to escape. They spend more time in the combustion chamber, it heats up the engine more, and then you can start having detonation. So the reason I said in conjunction with, get a fuel tuner. There's lots of different options for fuel tuners. I have some of my favorite ones. There's other ones I'd like to try. There's complete ECUs, but that's maybe going overboard at this point. I think you can get away with a quarter turn either direction without even worrying about it. When you start going a half turn, you could go half turn or so, and then the performance starts falling off. And this is in either direction. And the reason is because the jetting isn't perfect any longer. It's not exactly the way that they have expected it to run. So when you turn the power valve and you either add or take away fuel, and you can do it in different ranges because the power valve opens at a certain time and you can adjust these things. And when I had the 2020, I also had a 2019 that I had set up, and George, who's in our chat room right now, can vouch for how his bike runs, which is it's been tuned in conjunction, power valve tuning and fuel tuner. And it was like, it's definitely different than stock, and it's maybe not as flat as the stock bike. Mine had a little bit more pickup, but maybe a little bit later. It torqued a little bit longer, and I think what I did, if I'm guessing, I think I held the power valve down a little bit longer, which is what you have to be careful of. But I also added a little bit more fuel, made it run a little richer, so that it didn't get as lean or hot. And so some of the little bit of the detonation that you hear sort of went away. But it's all personal. So that is yes. The short answer is yes. You can adjust your power valve. I played with it. Yes, it's between those two things. It's like buying 733 different pipe and silencer combinations. Exactly. So before I would do the pipe and silencer, because if you start doing the muffler and the pipe, you're going to want to do some of the fueling changes too, and then you can tune the power valve to work even better with the pipe. And I was running an FMF. Actually, it was a prototype of an FMF pipe that I think they may or may not be producing right now. I don't know, but I smashed it to bits, and George kept it. So because the bike still ran pretty good. Hopefully that works. Robert Miller, Jimmy, you're spot on. Down here in Australia, Honda mini bikes have become super rare. Do they work when they're upside down? That's what I always wonder about Australia. And you know, really, it's funny to tell you a story about, like, you know, I used to have hair, and then I went to Australia. And I think my head got confused, and the hair started growing inside. It went the wrong way, and it went right down out of my head and started coming out of my back and some other places. So, yeah, Spencer Bloomer. I know Spencer. He's my roommate back in the 1960s, right? No, it was back when when I was trying to afford a house in Orange County, California. There is hope now that Suzuki has a new president. Things hopefully will change. And Spencer may or may not have some inside information, considering he might work for JGR Suzuki. So he's on the inside, and that sounds good. Jason Abbott. Oh, here we go. I don't see much off-road on the new Cowies. Where's the handguards, skid plate, and big tank? Well, you didn't read the press release very well, Jason. Because what does it have? What of those three things, Logan, what does it have?
Big tank.
No, it doesn't.
What?
You didn't read it either? Do you even read Dirt Bike Test? You can't answer that question? You taking the fifth? It's which one of those things? Take second guess, second try. What does it have? What does the Cowie have? He's looking at him, the kid going straight to searching.
Where did it go?
Out of those three things, what does the new? I should have. Oh, you know what we had at the last show? We had the drops buttons. We had the buttons, so somebody put it on his phone and put it up through the speakers, and he could push the button and it would say funny things. That's like something good, you know, real radio shows and stuff have. I'm gonna break it to you. It has a skid plate.
Yeah.
So the KX450 actually has a skid plate in the center, but on the XC they've added these kind of side pods to it. They're probably in the real off-road world are a little bit more like decorations. Like a real guy would probably put something a little bit more substantial on it. But you are definitely correct about the way that Kawasaki went about those bikes, and they kind of made it simple, because inside the engine there's no transmission changes, which Yamaha is one of the few companies that goes to the effort of doing that in the quote XC line. Like KTM generally keeps the ratios the same, SX to XC, and they do it because they feel it's the best, because they have the opportunity to change it to like EXC or to mix and match. But it's they feel like that the guys that are racing those bikes don't really need that any sort of a different wider spread. Kawasaki didn't really explain why they did. But the other aspect of keeping the transmission ratios the same is cost. Cost. Because you just keep running those motors down the assembly line and you don't make any changes, and it's just another unit you're selling that didn't cost any more to manipulate. But what Kawasaki did do was kickstand, which I think on the KX might have been difficult for someone to do other than aftermarket, because they have a foot peg bracket that integrates it in, and then you can still move your foot peg position, which you can on the Kawasaki. I didn't really look at it that close, but they did 18-inch rear wheel, which is a little bit spendy. They put different spring rates on the suspension, and they said that means the suspension is altered, but I've been told that the valving internally is exactly the same, and there's no big gas tank. So, and that's kind of another thing that Yamaha on some of their bikes does. KTM does it with the XCs. They put the bigger tank, and so it's just kind of a mix or match based on what each manufacturer feels is important and what they can get away with. And then Kawasaki didn't even change. They don't have a different ECU or program, which a lot of other manufacturers do. They just supply it with the black plug in place. One thing that you can do in a Kawasaki is they do have a handheld tuner, and you could basically make any map you wanted and put it into the bike, which is a pretty good thing to do. So I would suspect if you can find somebody that has one of those, you could make that bike into whatever you really want to know. And then Chris, which always Chris Reel, piping in with really good info, says the big tank subject might be a bit more regulatory complex than new models want to address for a little while, and that's evaporative emissions. So, in order for bikes to have bigger tanks and things, you could just put one on and still sell it as a race bike, but if they go to any other form, having a big tank is a little tricky. So, George wants to know if we did the flat track south of the equator. What? I didn't get that one. Jeffrey, you win. You're smarter than Logan. Jeffrey, and I can't. You got to pronounce his name. Do you see his name? Wagutal. It's almost like Washougal. The small skid plate doesn't count. Robert Miller says, Jimmy, what's the latest on Dakar 21? Location going ahead or not? It's gonna be in Saudi Arabia. They were thinking about going into other countries. I think they had a press conference not too long ago, and I think because of all the COVID stuff, they decided to just kind of scale back and not go out to other countries. But I'm not 100% sure on that. And as of right now, everybody suspects that it is a go. I mean, they're planning on it. I'm going to go suffer because of that tomorrow. So, rally training. In 100 and how high is it going to be at Baker, California? Is it how big is it? What's that big thermometer going to read? Because that's where you go ride, I guess, if you want to win Dakar. You don't kid around in this like 80 or 70 degree weather or something someplace nice. No, you want to go ride when it's 1,000,000. And then you take your guy that tells you did it wrong with you, and then he just suffers the whole time. What does Robert Miller want to know from me?
Jimmy, from a mechanical perspective, how difficult is it to make a gearbox that can be swapped out by just buying optional wide ratio gears? Honda did this to the 90s with the CR250 and 500 optional wide ratio 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
So it's not that difficult. If you know how to split cases and you know which parts to buy and you know where to put them back on the transmission shafts. But for most people, that's pretty difficult. So when Honda did it, they were putting a 6-speed into they were just making a wide ratio 5-speed, I think, on the CRs. Actually, Grant Plansky, I saw him pop up on the forum, and he had one of those bikes, and I was not changing. I was riding a KTM back then that had wide ratio 6-speed transmissions in them, so my bikes came stock with the right thing. That's why KTM says, what's their slogan, Logan?
Ready to race?
Right. My KTM was ready to race right past Grant's however many speeds he had in his Honda. popping a wheelie. And my bike was, by the way, a 125, and his was a 250, and it would pop a wheelie right past him. Yeah, question.
The Honda of Italy made the wide ratio 5-speed for as an enduro bike and street bike in Europe.
Right.
But Honda didn't import it. And
there was a ways you
Alan
could.
Roach
There was
the
yeah.
the kits.
There was companies that were able to get those imported and stuff. I don't think it was specifically a Honda one. We have a story up on dirtbiketest.com that you can see about putting a 6-speed into a KTM 450 XC XCF, and that's what burns the tire off the back of your KTM 450 XCF if you don't stop at a pit and take 20 seconds to change a wheel to save about 3 minutes, and possibly save some crashes. But that's a longer story for a better time. But there's options to it. KTM has all these different gears, and their transmissions are very similar among bikes. And when you have a 500 EXC and a 450 SX, there's ways you can kind of combine those. Same with even some of the smaller bikes I've heard. And if you're really crazy, you can get gears made. You can have, a lot of the race teams have very interesting transmissions inside of their bikes, and so it's just how much effort do you want to put in it? How much do you really need that? And as much as I complain about it all the time, I often think, I'm always wondering to myself, how much am I riding below the speed where my transmission works, and how much am I riding above the speed where my transmission works? And I mean, we have a pretty wide range of riding out here, and a lot of times we're riding on dirt roads to get to the really good riding, which is lower than first gear, and we want to go faster than fifth or sixth. We did that yesterday riding a YZ125 and a WR250F to get up to the mountains. How come you didn't go? You're giving me a funny look.
Oh,
You had a hot date?
no.
No. Had to work?
No. We
No?
spent some time at my grandparents.
Oh,
and
okay.
Then looked at a trailer.
That's a good excuse. You weren't playing, you weren't watching cartoons?
No.
No cartoons. Okay. Yes, Bob.
We had to push Dave Chase on his CR125 gear to go 90 out of the pits because it wouldn't pull low gear.
Well, Dave Chase was kind of on the portlier side.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, because the transmission wouldn't handle it. That's why I raced a KTM 125 that had 6-speed transmission in it, and it hauled ass. So, let's see. Hey, a couple other companies what other companies should I thank, Logan?
Climb.
Right.
Recluse.
Right. And maybe more? Maybe.
DDC.
Yeah, a little bit, but mostly Climb.
Yeah.
Yeah, Climb has supported dirt bike tests since the very beginning of dirt bike test, since the very beginning of this show, whatever we call it, a podcast, a show. And they make good gear, and I'm going to be wearing Climb gear tomorrow, vented gear, and I'm going to be comfortable as I can possibly be. There's one other question there that Robert Miller asked. From a mechanical... No, what was the other one?
My gearbox.
Was there another one about a gearbox?
Yeah.
Was it the one that Cody Joseph asked?
No, it's right above Cody Joseph.
Oh, it is? I can't see that one. See, that's the way that the questions here work. Okay, what's that one? What's about my gearbox?
My gearbox comment was how around hard would it be for a Kawasaki to make a WR gear set for the new KX 250 XC and 450 XC? That would specify a wide range of buyers. Granted, you need to split cases by making a WR third, fourth, and fifth.
I'd say it's about a $300 to $400 per unit question, I'm guessing. If they were, so when a manufacturer is designing and developing these bikes, and they literally, it goes right down to, okay, what's it going to cost? How long are we going to have these things for? You know, do we need to have future improvements for this current model? And there's lots of things like that will determine, you know, what they put inside of it. If they see this thing as this bike having a really long run and nothing changing, maybe they'll invest in having the gear sets, you know, a different gear set inside of it. It's funny because they did this total redesign of the KX250F head, and I was going to give a really good close look to see if there was anything inside of that. Because there was some casting embossments in it, and I'm going, are they going to go down the route of like KTM where they start, you know, using these motors for multiple purposes? They also put a reed valve inside of the bottom end to kind of control the breathing, which sometimes can help with, you know, oil spray and different things. But, you know, is there a future for a KX XC and then some sort of a, you know, a dual sport bike or emissions compliant bikes a little bit farther out there in the future? You just never know. I mean, what they're planning, but so it just comes down to cost, you know, when someone's going to put this transmission inside of it. And, you know, like on Honda's on their RX models, they have the motocross transmission. They change the final drive ratio. And so it gets the job done for the most part. But he says, Cody Joseph says, the only current KTM that has the XS Trans is the 450 XCF. The 250, 350 XCF and 250, 300 XC have a semi-wide ratio 6-speed. That is correct. So, big miss by Honda and Kawai, in my opinion, to use the close ratio 5-speed for cross-country. I tend to agree with you. Yeah, the 250, 350 XCF... It's funny because they call it semi-wide, and I'd have to go and check because there was a couple years when they were the same, and I have to check. I have to go back. There's so many different transmissions and bikes in my head. I'm trying to remember, because they said that the XCW and the XC for the 2-strokes were the same motors, which kind of makes sense. And the XCW, the W kind of used to stand for wide ratio. And I'm pretty sure that the transmission ratios were the same when I raced it up in Washington. That was the last time I was on an XC, so I don't really know. And then somebody else was mentioning about the Italian Honda CRE wide ratio. So pretty good. Janie is back at the office, per se, at the Ramiro's, so she's not here. She says, happy Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, y'all. Robert Miller, my gearbox comment was was that the one we were talking about? Oh,
I think so.
I thought you said somebody named My Gearbox made a comment.
Oh.
It's okay. If it were YouTube's or something like that, we would have a My Gearbox following us and then probably telling us we don't know what we're talking about. So... cool thing a lot of guys don't know about the YZ250X, says Cody Joseph, is that you can put in the WR400 or 426F first and second gear if you want a super low enduro gearing. 3 to 5 are already identical between 250X and old 426. Cody, that's an awesome bit of info. So you get a super low first and second for like gnarly trail riding, and then the rest of the gear. So you'd have a big 2 to 3 gap, I suspect. I don't know. And that's another thing when you're talking about transmission ratios. When we all start talking about like all these transmission ratios, there's a lot of riders that are really picky about having a gap in the gears. You know, if it's first to second or second to third. First to second isn't too bad for most people, but if you put a second to third gap in a transmission, and especially heavier riders that, you know, that require more power, you feel that, and you have to gear the whole bike around that, and then some of your other gaps aren't right, and so it's a little bit trickier than it seems, and boy, it's a lot of work if you go inside your transmission, build what's your ideal gear set, take it out on the trail and ride it, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. So lots of gearing talking. I got to write the note down to make sure that we talk about that gearing. And then there's also final drive gearing. You know, if the whole bike is overall a little bit, the ratios are a little bit too low, you can, you know, change it, make it higher gearing. And then you're asking somebody, like, I get confused when, are we talking about higher gearing? Does higher gearing mean the bike goes slower? Yes. And does lower gearing mean it goes faster? Yes, because you're pulling a bigger sprocket. It's pulling a smaller sprocket that's making the bike go faster per the amount of engine RPMs. It gets kind of confusing and all that. And a couple other things about gearing. Gearing can change the way your suspension works, believe it or not, by how you're lifting the chain off, you know, off the chain wear pads and changing kind of the angle of the chain a little bit. I know on really high level race tuning they're pretty particular about it. When you change the gearing, sometimes you change your wheelbase, you know, based on your wheel getting a little bit, you know, farther back in the swing arm, based on your gearing choices. And so I've actually seen guys dink with the ratios, so they're actually getting the similar final drive by changing, you know, going up one tooth on the front and down two on the rear, or vice versa, going down one on the front and you know, so they're making the ratios. I just got confused. Did you get confused, Logan?
Oh, I was reading the comments.
You reading the comments? Are there any good ones?
Cody Joseph just
Give another good
explain
comment.
more.
Okay, good. We'll get to that one. And then on the other thing about gearing is when you do go to a bigger rear sprocket, it puts your gears closer together. So a lot of times, if you're really riding in, you know, second, third, fourth gear, it makes it so you can ride in second or fourth, where if you go to a smaller sprocket, you can only ride in second and third and not fourth, or third and fourth. And if you downshifted a second, it would be too much. So it's a tuning option, definitely a tuning option if you're into doing that level of tuning. What has Cody got now?
The XC and XCW is the same 3 through 6. First and second are taller on the XC, 10% taller first and 4% taller second on the XC. A lot of guys say it cures the second to third gap.
Okay, so he's talking about the KTMs. Well, Cody, you got to come in and be a co-host in this show. You're chock full of information. He's one of those guys that remembers the numbers, I guess. Let's see. XC and XCW are the same 3 through 6. First and second are taller on the XC. Oh, boy. I'm just trying to remember what they said. And that makes perfect sense. Let's see. First, and a lot of guys say it cures the second and third gap. And they're feeling the gap on the XCW, I suspect. See, I don't feel that especially on the 300. I didn't think it was an issue, but I can see that where it was. And then we guys just saw the whole thing jump up. And then he had a good question about he put in some more information about the Yamaha too, didn't he?
Yes.
Okay, what's that one?
You are right on the YZ. The WR first and second did put a gap between second and third for sure.
Yeah. So cool. And Tarek won't get off his Suzuki thing. Off topic. At least he acknowledges that. The RG500 Gamma has a cassette-style transmission that you can change in 15 minutes. You know, that is a cool feature. And actually, didn't Cannondale's have that too?
Yes.
The Husky Autos used to, yeah, because you had to change everything in the Husky Auto every once in a while. By the way, this is Swedish Husqvarna way back when they were making a 3-speed automatic transmission that 4
and then 3.
4, well, because 4 broke all the time.
Well,
it was better, but it didn't last very long, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then they were making basically they put a bunch of Honda 50 clutches in series, right?
Not that simple.
Not that simple, but that's basically what it was. Yeah. So, yeah, I think Cannondale had a cassette style transmission, and then there was a few other bikes that had that, but it's, for most people that's way overkill and a lot of expense and stuff like that. What does Robert Miller want to know? You ready with that one? You're staring at old vintage bikes again, aren't you?
Yeah.
The book, where's it? Do you remember who got us that book? No? Mm-mm. We Went Fast.
Oh.
We Went Fast. Follow at We Went Fast on the social medias. Logan's infatuated with that. Did you sell all your vintage bikes?
No, two left to sell.
2 left, yeah. So yeah, you can start collecting those when they're really expensive, Logan. Okay, Robert Miller says,
Jimmy, can you explain the changes KTM made to their 500 EXC gearing from 2017 onwards? I read something where they changed the ratio of fourth or fifth.
So what I'm pretty sure they did is basically the KTMs used to be geared to pass the sound test. And they are still geared to pass the sound test. They have to. So there's a certain RPM and a drive-by speed, and it's a whole bunch of stuff. Chris Reel could tell you exactly about it. I mean, exactly about it, but we won't get into that. So what KTM did was because they were coming with like a 15-tooth countershaft and a 47 or 48 rear, I don't remember which one it was, or 45 rear. 45, yeah. It was a really short chain. And even if you wanted to go down to a 13 countershaft, you could barely get a 48 sprocket on with a stock chain. It'd have it all the way up there. And they wanted to make it so that the sprockets on the bike were usable and the gear ratios were usable. So they actually kind of redid everything. And I think they nailed it. I mean, now it comes, I think, 1450 or 1448 or somewhere in there. 14 might be 1451. I don't know. It's different between 500 and 350, but maybe it isn't. But it's around that. And now the ratios, they've got the ratios inside the transmission to work with that final drive set, and the bike manages to pass and do whatever it has to do at the sound test, et cetera, et cetera. That is the big change. I don't know if they changed it much internally. I know they did some stuff, shifting the power around and the RPMs and using that reed valve to quiet things down. There's a lot of stuff that went on that it all works together. It's a package. But that is the basic change between the going from the 17. If you just take your 2017 or newer and put 1450 on it, which is what I run on all of mine, you're going to be fine. And then you can change the axle block around in the back, and you can switch to a 48 or a 52 depending on which direction you want to go. Lots of options there. So, man, this is the gearing show, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because of the gearheads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And Spencer chimes in. Also, all of the race teams have different clutch basket gears to get the preferred final drive ratio while maintaining the bike length. So there's a whole nother level of factory tuning that oftentimes people don't even, consider or think about it. I mean, it's funny because when you look at when you see a factory bike, you look at it and you're looking at the graphics and the factory suspension pieces and all the coatings and colors and stuff like that. There are so many little teeny tiny tweaks to those bikes that make them so unique and different. And it's all kind of just trying to make the rider happy. So when I love it when a factory rider complains about his bike because it's his fault. It's like you didn't test it very much. Yeah, you just ride a lot more. Cody Joseph, you just ride a lot more bikes than I do. It's easy to remember the numbers when you only own these 2 bikes. So I'm just guessing because Cody didn't tell me. I'm guessing Cody owns a KTM either XC or XCW 300 or 250 and some sort of Yamaha WR FX YZ.
And you used to own a 426.
Yeah, maybe he had a 426, something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of options out there. Hey, you know what connects your gearing to your engine, Logan? Like there's the part that makes the power.
Yes.
That's the piston and the crank and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then on the backside, there's gears and the chain sprocket and stuff. What's in between that? What separates those two?
Between the
power producing part of the motor?
Yes.
And then the drive part of the motor.
Begins with a C.
You got 3 people giving us.
Everybody's giving them signals around out here. It's like they're flashing gang symbols at Logan. Come on, this isn't that technical of a question. It's the thing you slip.
Oh, clutch.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know how you can not have to think about it, kind of like you don't?
Recluse.
Oh, recluse.
Recluse, yeah.
Automatic
yeah.
recluse.
If you put a recluse clutch in your bike, you don't have to think about the clutch anymore. It does all the work for you.
Yes.
They make it easier to ride, right? They're for old people or just easier to ride?
I liked it.
Okay, good. I like them too. I have them in most of my bikes. So you can go to recluse.com if you want to solve your stalling and your... I've always said that almost everybody I put on technical trail rides, they go up a skill level once they go on a recluse. And the only people that I've met that don't like recluse clutches, which is almost everybody, are people that really haven't tried them or given them a chance. Right, Al?
Yep.
Al raises his hand. He's 97 years old, still riding, and he's not going to change. It's not lazy enough for a recluse. This is the guy that gets off and says, "Jimmy, how many push-ups are we doing today?" Yeah, it's challenging me to push-up contests.
I'm getting back.
Okay, and George is stirring the pot. He says, will 500cc two-strokes make a comeback because my 300 just doesn't have enough snap now that I put on 87 pounds during COVID?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, your 300 doesn't have enough snap because your right wrist doesn't turn the throttle far enough.
Better traction is getting now.
Yeah, you're getting better traction. It doesn't spin up as easily as it used to. So that's my answer to that. I had a couple. We talked about a little bit about the new KX. Hey, do you want me to? Because our last show was super dedicated towards adventure bikes. That's why you didn't listen. Because you're not old enough to ride adventure bikes yet. Did you see the Honda Africa Twin out there?
I think last time I was here, I did.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't here. It's new. It's new. Just brought it over here. I had quite possibly one of my top 10 worst riding experiences on that bike. Everybody says, Jimmy, all you do is say good things. I'm gonna say bad things right now, especially since I'm talking to a certain manufacturer about doing some advertising and stuff. This is probably the best thing I can do for dirt bike test right now. But there's a moral to this story. So I got the Africa Twin last week right after the podcast we did, and I switched because Berm Cannon Mark brought it over, and then I took it and brought it back out here. And so it is a very technologically advanced motorcycle. And in fact, it has a small keyboard on the left grip. And even the right grip has a lot of buttons on it compared to most. It's got a lot of buttons on it. And you're sitting there going, well, what do they do? Well, I pretty much can, I think, and this is just me being me, I knew there was a lot of buttons. I knew there was a lot of modes. Everybody that's ridden it kind of talked about it. I mean, there's like 18 different screens or modes you can use. And generally the manufacturers are pretty good at finding like some preset ones that are okay. So I said, okay, I downloaded the videos. I got the press videos that explained how all the buttons work. I downloaded them. I put them on my computer. I just didn't have the 30 or so minutes to watch the 5 or 6 videos. So I just hopped on the bike and I rode it. I managed to figure out how the cruise control worked because I just rode to Vegas on the highways, just going. I was just trying to get there. Man, it's been a while since I rode a BMW that had cruise control on a motorcycle. It is phenomenal. I love it. It's just like in your car. When you get in there and use it, it just relaxes you. It does all the work for you. You can kind of set it at a speed. You're not going to get a ticket because my problem when I'm riding a motorcycle on the street is it's 75, 85, 95, and I look down. I'm like, uh-oh. And I'm just slowly, because I just want to accelerate. And so this kind of stops that, and I can just let the bike just roll along and pay more attention to the sights. Not crashing into cars that are going too fast or too slow, whatever they're doing. Brilliant cruise control. And then on the way back, I decided, hey, I'm going to go back around the backside of the mountain, come over Mount Charleston, Wheeler Pass, do some off-road, because that's what it's for. It was cool. It was at night. It was cooled off. Decided to do it. And I got on the dirt and I put it onto off-road, just set off-road mode. And there's traction control, there's wheelie control, there's power adjustment, there's ABS, of course. There's a lot of other features. And the traction control just riddled me. It was because it's fly-by-wire. That's why the fuel inject. That's why the cruise control works so good. It was like the little monkey that was turning the throttle inside the throttle body for me, which was completely different what I was doing with my wrist. I wanted to kill the thing. I literally couldn't figure out. So I'm like, okay, I'll start pushing buttons. I can, there was a user mode that Berm Cannon Mark had set, and I guarantee you that he went out and rode the bike and stuff. He probably didn't go in. I was riding on pretty much a Jeep trail. You need a real Jeep on. You need some 4-wheel drive, lots of loose rocks, some pretty steep inclines. And he probably didn't take an adventure bike on that. It wouldn't have been very smart, but here I am. And that monkey could not figure out how to turn the throttle, because any time that I wanted a little snap of power, it sensed wheel spin and it cut it. And then I just start turning the throttle farther and farther, wanted it to go. And every once in a while I'd say, I have traction. And that's right about the time that maybe I was falling over, losing my balance. I didn't crash, did a couple bad dabs, but man, so I stopped 20 times, 5 to 20 times that I stopped and started pushing buttons and trying to figure out how to enter into a mode where I got it to where I could change it. And so they had a mode called gravel, and I tried that. I said, well, I'll try the gravel one, because these are, it's gravel. I mean, granted, they're the size of bowling balls, gravel, but I'll use that. Didn't work. So I tried, user 1, user 2, gravel, touring, urban. In fact, urban, believe it or not, urban had the best throttle response in the low traction situations and stuff. But I was just flustered, and I barely made it over something that I could very easily ride over on any number of other bikes that are not so mechanically assisted. Technologically assisted. So I came back home and was pissed. Then I went and watched the videos, and I started learning how to turn things on and off. And it's like anything, you have to go practice it. And here's where we get stilted as journalists and media and people that ride lots and lots of different bikes. It takes time to learn how to use where all those buttons are to get your. When I ride my own personal bike, my thumb knows exactly which buttons to push. I'm very fluid on the KTM. There's different buttons, but to how to adjust, turn on things, turn off things, and mostly I'm not doing rider adjust modes. It's just seeing what my fuel mileage is, seeing how hot it is outside, stuff like that. And people want more and more technology in this stuff, and then other people want less and less. And it's kind of if you're going to have this, I think you need you have to take the time to learn it. And I just struggled with it. So I need to go. Now I know how to play with it, and I went and set my own user mode, and I managed to turn the ABS off, which was another big issue, because sometimes when the traction all of a sudden came on and the bike lunged forward, and I'm like, I need to use the brakes real quick, and it decided it was going to use the brakes intermittently, like ABS. So yeah, that's a tricky one. So I need to go back and give that bike another shot. But boy, it has a lot of power. It's not a lightweight bike. It's not a 700 or 790 or anything, that's for sure. So, you want to ride that bike, Logan? Honda?
No.
Who said no?
Say no.
Why did you tell him to say no?
Say yes.
Pretty heavy.
You think you can
I'll try it.
You'll try it? You think you can ride it? You can't pick it up.
No.
Take somebody with you.
Hey, I've got a guy sending me a power up kit for the 390, the KTM 390. So, yeah, we can we can power that thing up a little bit. I'd like to get the foot pegs more leveled up. And that brings me to another question that somebody on our YouTube channel asked. He said he watched our other podcast, our last one, and he said, I'd really like to know if the pivot pegs will fix the cockpit issue on the KTM 390. Pivot pegs, you're aware of those things? So good or bad is not for me to decide. I would just tell you they're absolutely 100% not for me because I feel like I'm falling off the motorcycle when I'm on a pivot peg. So I suspect for someone, it's hard for me to stand up on a pivot peg because all of a sudden I no longer have a reference on where zero is, because the pegs are, it's like I'm on a, like seasick, like on a boat. And then the fact that they move independently and that's how I put all my control inputs into the bike. And sometimes I'm pivoting on the front of the peg or sometimes I'm pivoting on the rear. So instead of the input going to the bike, I actually start losing my balance. So for some people that might work, but for me, I know it absolutely wouldn't work. So, yeah. Vince C. Watched our KTM 350 video and he said, thanks. Audio is awful, though. Can you imagine that? You think he's an audio engineer?
If he is, he can help us.
That's what I always say. Yeah. Actually, if you think our audio is bad, you should listen to the last 2 episodes of Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. We didn't use our good mics. It was bad. We need to work on that. B Barnes is watching our Yamaha Tenere T7 test ride, and he says, I'd love to know your thoughts on comparing it to your KTM 950 Adventure. I think I read some things a time ago that you've had one for quite a while and a lot of miles on it. That is true. Seems like Yamaha's intention is to fill the slot that a more elaborate, heavy, expensive KTM 1090, 1190, 1290 left behind. I agree with you, B Barnes. Almost. It's funny because if I were to compare the KTM if I were to compare the Tenere to any current adventure bike, the one it reminds me of the most is the KTM 950, and actually the 990 Baja would be the one because that came kind of without ABS and it was pretty simplified, and it was when KTM really kind of refined it. But it feels like a lightweight one of those with similar power levels, but smoother. Definitely smoother on the bottom and better drivability. So that's that one. Kelsey says on our 300 KTM XCW full test, the only 300 I've ridden is a KTM 300 MXC. I thought the power was perfect on that bike. I've been wanting a 300 since that day. Well, if you rode a KTM 300 MXC, that's how long ago? 10 years ago, maybe? It's been a while since they've had an MXC. It would blow you away by how much better the new KTM 300 is. I mean, the fact that it's fuel injection means all the jetting issues were gone from back in the day. It probably feel 50 pounds lighter. Feel like it has a third more horsepower and better drivability and traction everywhere. Let's see. I got one on the KTM 390. RC says, this is the single best review I've seen for this bike. So incredibly thorough and done by real dirt riders and real off-road conditions. Thank you. Were you one of those real dirt riders, Logan?
I don't think so.
You didn't ride the KTM 390?
Oh, I did.
Yeah. Then you're one of the real dirt riders this guy's complimenting. You should give yourself a pat on the back. Yeah. Good job. Let's see. There's a lot of people talk nice things about it. Brilliant, no nonsense. Review as an ex-GSA owner looking for different options before I get back on a Beamer. This is interesting. I wonder what size Beamer he was on to be looking at the KTM 390. So, Mr. Migraine says, while I'm not planning to learn and start riding motorcycles until at least 2 years from now due to studies, I can see this is already a good bike becoming much better after 2 or 3 itinerations. Seems like it will be perfect if they implement a few of your suggestions. Would probably buy it as a novice rider once I get my A2 license. So we have people that aren't riding yet that are planning to ride in 2 or 3 years. That's a long time. Checking out our videos. Not too bad. Are you taking pictures? Is that what that flash is?
It's flashing?
I saw. Did you see a flash?
Oh,
Yeah, I saw flashes. Maybe it just maybe I'm going cuckoo. And Loud or Nothing says, listen to this one, Logan. He says, LOL, this dude wants to sell KTM so bad. Is that me?
Sort of.
Give me that read right over there. Just for you, Mr. LOL Loud or Nothing. Powered by a distinct ready race mentality, KTM is the world's leading high-performance street and off-road sport motorcycle manufacturer with North American headquarters based in Murrieta, California. Over the years, KTM has built a reputation as a fierce competitor on racetracks around the world, and the brand's remarkable global success is reflected in every product it develops and every move it makes, like getting me to be the dude that wants to sell you a KTM. I want to sell you any motorcycle that you want to buy. I mean, I'm not personally going to sell it to you, but I want to see more people on dirt bikes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good for us. It's good for everybody. And the KTM 300 XCW is a pretty good choice for 45% of the people that I talk to, I think. Yeah. The KTM 500 EXC is the best choice for everybody, I think. Just because it's a big catch net. Let's see. As you said, this is April the Torty Cat. Are we getting questions on the chat room over there, Logan? You keeping logs of those?
Only 2.
Okay. I'm going to keep going down this list here. April the Torty Cat says, as you said, this bike has components from the 90s. He's talking about the Yamaha Tenere T7. The biggest problem I have with this bike is it costs 12,000 euro in my country, and that's total nonsense for a bike from the 1990s. I really like the T700, but I will wait for the Aprilia 660 Touareg to come out in 2021. Oh, I can't speak to your exchange rate, and when I say the components from the 1990s, I'm actually saying it as a compliment. Because they were good components even back then, and they probably have the capability to perform at a level that will exceed most riders' ability, and at the same time keep the price in check and make the bike a little less complex. I don't know how much better it would get with components from the 2000s, although it's really like late 1990s is when these components are from. Yeah, late 1990s. So they're really not that old. Like, how old are you, Logan?
I'm 14.
When were you born?
2005.
So these components are older than you. Yeah. Clayton Thomas wants to know, where is this trail? And he's watching our Yamaha Tenere video. What do I usually tell people when they ask where the trail is?
Somewhere out there?
Yeah, go find it yourself. That's half the adventure, man. If it looked like a good trail, you need to go find it yourself, because if I tell you where it's at, you and 10 of your friends will go there, and then you guys will tell 10 more friends, and then 100 people go in there, and then the trail gets beat up, and you didn't have to do anything but ask somebody to tell you where something was. And the good stuff is getting harder and harder to find, and I intend to keep it that way. So when you ask me where my videos and stuff are shot, I'm going to tell you, go find it yourself. So that's just being nice to the land. So what's the next question on the form there?
Justin Bradley. Did I miss all the KX 450 XC discussion?
Yes, evidently you did. Sorry about that. So you just chimed into this podcast, or it doesn't matter where you found it, where you are. If you're listening to it now, you go, how can I find more of this? If you really want to watch us, that's your own problem. But if you want to listen to it, we're going to start as soon as I sit still for a few days. We're going to start putting up a lot of the other episodes, 1 to 30, and then 50 to 60. It'll be 50 to 70 now by the time I get to it, I guess. We're going to put those up on SoundCloud, which means they'll be on iTunes and SoundCloud and all those platforms. You can listen to them there. It makes it a lot easier to watch. You can watch this on YouTube, on Dirt Bike Test channel. You can watch it live every Tuesday night on Facebook. Every once in a while, Mark comes in and puts it live on Instagram, but then it disappears in a little while, and then that's why Logan says he can't find it. So, what does he want to know about the KX450 XC? Do you have a specific question? Maybe we can get at it.
No.
Okay.
That's all he said.
What's our next question?
George said, Jimmy, I'll mail you some set of pivot pegs from my 1190. You can weld them in place for the 390. Sorry, I didn't think of that earlier.
Hey, that's a great idea. Because we want to get flat pegs, and I've reached out to a few different people that were talking about making and want to make. It's not as easy because that bike is so unique. It's not as easy as you would think because it has a different width. The pin diameter is the same as the other ones, but the thickness of the part that rides in the foot peg bracket is a little bit different. And the foot peg bracket is its own unique thing, so it's a lot harder than we would have thought. Is that it on the form there? What type of camera is that on your helmet? Is there external power supply? So he's talking about my Tour of Idaho video, and I was actually on that one. I used Contour helmet cams, which was a really good company that I thought actually made stuff that was better than GoPro, and because they weren't as good at marketing, they sort of went away. But I still use them on occasion. They're just easy to work. They had a big switch that turned them on and off, and so I use that. But we've lately been using a GoPro Hero 7 for a lot of our stuff. The image stabilization on that is really good. The sound is mediocre, and then we've also some of our other videos with bad audio quality is a Sony helmet cam, or it's a Sony action cam that we've mounted to the helmet, and we've put an external microphone on, and we are still playing with that to the best of our ability because we ride dirt bikes and we're not sound engineers. You should maybe be a sound engineer, Logan. You go to school and do that. You don't say much, so you listen to it. That would make you a good sound engineer. Okay, here we go. Terry Monks asks, as a new rider, a dad with kids, and looking for a bike to go off trails and do easy sections, maybe even pop a tent down for the night, this is literally the perfect bike for me. The KTM 390 has nailed the audience in this one. Adventure bikes are either enormous or low spec, and this is a good mix at a very good price point. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Do you want to just go take it and plop a tent down?
I'd rather the 250, the
Honda. Yeah. I think especially when you start going more and more off-road,
yes,
that's what that bike, it's a little bit more like a dirt bike. And the KTM, I think, is a little bit more like a adventure bike.
Yes.
So the more miles you're actually going to log, I would be a little hesitant to take the KTM on single track trail, where the Honda it wouldn't even faze me.
Yes.
For the most part. So what other notes did I have here to talk about tonight? I told my we got to pick a winner in our climb show us your junk backpack challenge. Did you watch all those videos?
No.
I'm thinking Logan's not being a very good participant here. Do we need to have like an hour a day where you need to focus on your dirt bike test duties?
Something.
Yeah, some structure in this program.
Yeah.
Did he ever wash his bike?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, bike's washed? I was a little worried about that one. Hey, do you know that Taddy Blazusiak joined Gas? Did you know that?
No.
Well, here's the interesting thing about that. So Taddy Blazusiak, he's won Erzberg multiple times, enduro cross champion, guy's legend. He actually he showed up to Erzberg the first year when he was going to race it. He was a trials champion. I think national. I don't know how he did in the world trials, but he was a gas factory rider for the trials thing. Showed up on a clapped out gas dirt bike and was going to win. Basically, was going to win the Erzberg on a gas, and KTM slid a bike underneath him. Did he do it the first time on the gas? No, he wasn't. Because I was. Do you know that I was a factory gas rider at Erzberg? Yeah, the 2 times I finished Erzberg, here, let me pound my chest, was on a gas. In fact, it was on the exact same bike. Because, that's what a factory gas guy, because they take your bike that finished, and, well, it only finished with like 1 gear left in the transmission, but they probably threw it in the closet, and then the week before the next year, when I came back, they pulled it back out and put a new transmission in it and said, "Oh, here's your bike." It worked last year. So I rode on the same team as Manny Lettenbetzler's dad, who's KTM's extreme enduro guy. So Taddy was a gas guy, so they brought him back to the brand. Now that KTM owns it, they slid a gas underneath him. Here's the interesting thing. He's going to be riding a gas. Is it EC? I think they kept the same numbers. An EC 300 2-stroke and an EC 350 4-stroke. So what do you think the first gas models we will see over here in the U.S. besides the trials bikes? Yeah, it's just kind of a guess what's coming. Yeah, there'll be some gases coming. That's the bigger news in that particular story. Who's that?
Glenn Coldenhoff.
Oh yeah, racing the GPs on it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was so he's doing the 450.
Yeah.
It's a whatever. I imagine they call it. What did they used to call the gas motocross bikes?
Work.
Huh? Work. They didn't have motocross bikes. They never really were a motocross brand at all. And then Elias Saints rode a gas in the Dakar Rally, but I don't think you're going to really see something like that. So you know what you missed riding yesterday?
Rocks?
Yeah, we rode on some rocks. Yeah, through cactus, dust, heat, sand, on a YZ125X and the Yamaha WR250 F. So, which is pretty cool. We've got that bike now, and we're waiting to get like the competition ECU for it, so we can play with that tuner, and then you can build some maps for me. Right? You're a pro at that?
No.
No. Why haven't you learned how to do that yet? You got a YZ250 in the garage.
Yes.
Yeah, you made maps for that, right? Or did you just copy mine? No, you copied Travis Preston's maps. You just downloaded them off the internet.
Yeah.
And they're good.
I didn't like those.
Oh, good. Oh, we have something in common. I don't like any of Travis's maps. It's like if you could make a map wrong for me, he makes it. But that doesn't mean they're not good. They're just not good for me. I know a lot of people, the way that they ride, they really like the way that his maps respond, and I think we just turn the throttle a little bit differently, meaning him more and me less. So, any other stuff?
George wants you to call Chris Real.
He does? Does Chris Real want me to call him?
I don't know.
Oh, we got to ask him about the gas. So go search if you're sitting around your computers right now. Go search hashtag show climb your junk, and I promise you will learn something about the you'll learn something about what to pack in your rider toolkit. Because a lot of people ask me what I carry in mine, and I did a video, so it's up there also. But there's some of the readers and stuff. Let's just cold call. We'll just cold call Chris right now and see if we can put him on the show. This is how we do it here at Dirt Bike Test. Just he's probably eating dinner. He's probably had enough of Dirt Bike Test. I'd actually texted him, asked him if I could call, and I'll put him through on the machine here in a second if he actually answers. But it looks like he's just like, no, I don't want to answer that phone.
Hi, this is Chris Reel.
Yep.
GPS Tactical. Unfortunately, I missed your call.
Yes, you did.
Leave me a detailed message with your phone number, including the area code.
Okay.
I'll call you back
Area
as
code.
soon as I'm able.
Okay.
Thank you for calling.
It's good because he just called. Hey, Chris, you just called me back.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, I'm going to plug you into the voice-matron here. Hold on one second. And can you hear us now?
I can hear you.
Good. You're live on Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. As our resident oil and petroleum expert, I wanted to ask you one simple question. What's the best oil?
Whichever one's paying me the most today.
Yeah, there's no, we don't have any of that. Oh, we will take an oil sponsor though. So I have been, George, a few other people have been noticing a lot of people are having the problems that you outlined right when this COVID thing came about with intermittent, strange running problems, just funny, lots of funny stuff happen that seems to go along the fuel delivery route. How long are we going to be suffering with this?
Until we burn up the old gas. And so my guess is we will use up the winter blended fuels sometime around September, just before it changes again.
So we'll get done with we'll get done with it and go right back to it.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So and you're generally pretty accurate in the estimation of that stuff in the past. Did I tell you that we had a couple of little fuel boiling incidents?
Well, Jimmy, knowing where you ride and how you ride, it wouldn't surprise me a bit. But you didn't tell me the story. But I do know that lots of guys are having fuel related issues, and we're just gonna have to deal with it for a little while. You know? Yeah.
So my story, it wasn't actually me, the one that it really affected. It was Heather. Heather was riding the new Tenere, and we were coming across Nevada, and when it got about 109 degrees, and she had maybe fumes or a little bit more than fumes in the tank, at about a mile from the gas station, we were really stretching it out. The bike just and stopped running, and it basically, according to my calculations, there was probably about a half a gallon left in there, but it wasn't really. It was like more like it was boiling.
Yeah, it wasn't stable liquid.
No, and fuel pumps don't like that.
No, lean the bike on the side, empty your Camelback on it. It'll cool down. You'll go to the gas station, you'll fill up, and life is groovy. Oh,
you thought I had water in the Camelback to cool the bike down?
Well, in that case, park the bike under a tree, finish whatever beverage you might have, let the bike cool down. It's all good.
No, I went back, rode behind her, put my foot out, and pushed her to the gas station with my foot on the muffler. It worked out just fine.
And if this isn't an official endorsement, you can take the fuel cap off, and that'll allow the heat to dissipate pretty quickly. You got to do it carefully, but then the gas will turn back liquid and quit boiling so rapidly.
So it boils easier under pressure.
No.
It's
just the opposite. Under pressure, it has a slightly higher boiling point. The challenge is all the hot, air that's in the tank has no place to go, so we let that out.
Right. That makes, it's funny because even when I opened up my tank at that time, when we got to the gas station, it like you open it up, it went poof, and it like literally, when you unlocked it, it literally blew the lid up. And but
that's real dangerous. I did a video for the U.S. government on fuel geysering. You can search it on YouTube, and chainsaws will shoot a rooster tail and a geyser of fuel to the ceiling.
Yeah,
and so it's under pressure, and it's under quite a lot of pressure.
So another thing I've seen happen on dirt bikes is I've seen that the enough pressure when the fuel starts boiling, I've seen it actually been able to go up, and some of the fuel caps have like one-way valves and little balls inside of them.
Yep.
And it actually blows those things up and shuts them off as if the bike had tipped over on its side, so it doesn't spill, and it causes those to plug. And then you wonder why your fuel tank starts. Actually, most people go, "God, my radiator shroud looks kind of funny," because it's actually bulging off and doing weird things. And then you go, "Yeah, that the fuel is boiling."
The fuel is boiling, and when when you start saying we got a 100-degree day, you got to remember that the radiant heat coming off the road's 140 or above, and your gas tank is hugging your exhaust pipe, and fuel boils at around 110 degrees, 105 degrees, depending upon elevation and where you are and the type of fuel. So you've got a percolating system. It
doesn't take much. Yeah, it was 109 degrees when we were coming down into Vegas when Heather's bike. And like I said, probably not really a fault of the bike or in any way, shape, or form, because I think it was just getting low, and there was there wasn't enough to keep it cool. The other thing we've noticed specific to a lot of the dirt bikes and stuff is starting. They've been real intermittent with starting.
Yeah, and that's that's just a condition of the fuel, and I know that Heather's pretty aggressive on the throttle, but she's a mid-weight person, and so her fuel economy is going to change significantly. So if she's used on the 10-ray getting a certain fuel mileage number, she may still get that, but you get on the same motorcycle and you're a little more aggressive and a little bit more mass. I'm seeing fuel economy change by like 20% swing.
It's funny you bring that up, because it was funny when we went from the higher elevations where it was cooler down to lower elevations. We also started doing like more on road where we were kind of pushing it, so we were using the horsepower, and we did see a pretty big drop off, and we were kind of surprised by, when you're only dealing with, 4 or 5 gallons and you start budgeting it out. It's like we budgeted 240 miles, and when we ran out at 198, it was like, yep. Whoa. Yeah. That didn't see that coming. And, and
that's, the bike is good. You guys are good. You just have a fuel challenge that we'll all get through, but it's something you really have to be aware of, because you get used to being able to go a certain distance on a tank of fuel, and when that changes by 20 to 30%, that's a
lot.
That is a lot.
Can additives help this? No. Okay, that's a good question, and a straight answer. The other thing is, if it was the additives, and there was one other thing I was going to ask, and now what was I going to ask, Logan? You're supposed to read minds here too, by the way. So additives can't change. Non-ethanol fuel, does that make any difference?
A very minute amount, and it really depends upon the fuel and the properties of the fuel. You got to remember though that the fuel specifications vary from region to region, and many of them are federally mandated. So to back up just a little bit, the ethanol versus non-ethanol. I'm not a fan of ethanol just because of its side baggage and some other things, but I'd rather use ethanol-based fuels than walk.
Yeah.
And then when we back up to answer your questions about additives, remember that we're dealing with the actual density and vapor pressure and boiling point of the fuel. So adding a couple ounces of something in there, it's not going to change it.
What about mixing it like 50-50 with race fuel?
Well, depending upon the race fuel, they have different specifications. They're usually pretty stable. So yeah, that's certainly an option. And the other thing that's really an option is to try to, if you run on the top half of the tank, or you have more than a third of a tank of fuel in there, most people will never know.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. But any times I've had fuel boiling, and remember, I ride a Husaberg 570, and that bike it magically wrapped the tank around the motor and everything else, including the hot shock and the exhaust pipe, and a lot of it was carried like down and low. And you know how much power that bike makes, and what does power equal, Chris? You know this.
Oh, it's huge. I've ridden the 570s, the first ones in the country, and
So that bike can boil fuel. As well as rip tires right off the wheel. But so I had a lot of gas boiling incidents on that bike, and it's I guess it is an issue. And the big question for everybody though is does the winter blend reduce power in my motorcycle?
Well, it's less dense, and so you can take that or leave it. Basically, as it expands, it doesn't have the same amount of energy. It doesn't have the same amount of thrust on the piston, and so the answer to your question is it's less efficient.
Okay,
but it's in reality it's. You'd really have to be a human dyno to be able to tell, because we have a compensating device that's attached to our arm on the right side.
Right. Yeah. Mine has one position on it. It's called wide open. I'm always worried about the dyno numbers. That's what really affects me around here. Because if I'm losing any power, I'm going to go find out where I can buy some summer gas.
Yeah,
it's kind of like this, kind of like the summer beers I go for about this time of year.
Yeah, if you have cool, high octane, super stable fuel on a cool day versus crappy gas on a hot day, the better gas on a cool day is going to give you more power. It's just thermodynamics. It's just expansion between the cylinder head and the top of the piston.
So heat insulation on the bottom and the sides of the fuel tank, and wrapping the fuel lines with the insulation, this stuff will help?
Absolutely.
Yep.
When I was doing the Endurocross stuff, we never filled the fuel tank. Why carry the extra weight? So, the aluminum foil or a tank bag to insulate the bottom of the fuel tank, it's money. It's absolutely worth doing.
There you go. That's your way to avoid this. So for the next till September, if you're
and remember the fuel injected bikes, most of the time the fuel pump is inside the gas tank, and it's the gas tank on the 4-strokes cocoons the cylinder head, and so the fuel pump acts as a perfect heat sink to bring temperature into the gas tank, which is a challenge. And so putting 3 layers of aluminum foil on the of the aluminum tape on the tank is an inexpensive, quick Home Depot fix, which is beneficial. And of course, a tank bag, sometimes they fit all the bikes and sometimes they don't. So the the aluminum foil on the bottom of the tank is an
option. Yeah.
It's an option, and especially where you have the tank, maybe you have an oversized tank and it kind of hangs down
Even lower.
even lower,
Yeah.
and you get the exhaust, head pipe coming pretty close. But you don't have to do the whole bottom of the tank. You just do where the heat's going to be.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Well,
And if you're and I use the aluminum tape, but when I'm trying to impress my friends, I paint it gold so it looks like that.
oh man, that's cheap. Logan's sitting there going, I know how to. You know how you make some money, Logan? You go buy the gold spray paint and the cheap aluminum tank, and then you start selling it on the Amazons. The lower cost. Just cut it in half because you're going to make a fortune on that. So. Well, hey, thanks for dodging the oil question, Chris. I appreciate that because now I don't know which is the most horsepower oil, but other than that, I'm going to just.
I can tell you which one's the biggest horsepower oil, but when you got to remember that you got to have viscosity and then oil pressure, and we had this discussion when I was fortunate enough to be on the show. It's like
if you want to look at that, just search Tech Talk Taco Tuesday and Chris Real, and I'm sure that episode will pop up, especially on YouTube. I know it will, and on the podcasts as well. There's some really good information there, and Chris, I always thank you for coming on and being kind of the voice of reason because I just ride them. You know what I say?
Well, I mean, some of the guys, like. Young Logan there, I mean, he's got all the potential and he's got enthusiasm. And if he can absorb some of the knowledge and stuff that we're willing to give him, he can be the next expert while you and I fade into the sunset and drink more really good tequila.
Right. I'm trying to work on that. I really am. So, okay, Chris, well, on that, one of our TV monitors just bit the bullet here, and Logan looks like it's past his bedtime. He wants to take Grand Prix motocross book with him to do a little learning, and we'll catch you in the future, Chris.
Okay. Everybody have a good evening.
Okay.
Be safe.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Hey everybody, that was Chris Reel. He is from DPS Technical, and he does petroleum science, real science. That guy does. Actually, he's really good for off-road advocacy, and of course, George just posted up some stuff on our chat room. So if you want to get a little more engaged in the show, you can always join in, ask questions live in the chat room, post them in the links when we get these YouTube videos uploaded. I think we've done most of our reads, but I definitely like to thank again Recluse, Climb, Taco Moto helps us out, DDC. There's a lot of companies that kind of keep the wind in the sails here at Dirt Bike Test, and we only got bigger and better things to announce in the very near future. So if you are in the marketing department of some company, keep a couple extra bucks in your budget because we've got some cool stuff happening here. So with that, what do we say, Logan?
See you out on the trails.
Okay, cheers, guys. See ya.